I love to be.
I remember masturbating when I was
horny.
Being molested by my
Oh, but I don't think I told her about. Like now, I love to use strap-on. Just jacking off. So she like sticks her finger. It felt good. I just knew it was like wrong. She's like, oh, you ever put your finger in your butt? You go like kitchen to get a carrot and like fuck yourself. I knew it was like something dirty or bad. It was like when I masturbated.
I woke up one time to a guy fingering me.
One time I was probably 6 years old, 5 or 6. My father was playing tennis and I was in the park with him. And so I went to the playground. There was a man, an older man. And so this man came up to me and said, "Can you help me fix my bicycle?" So he had his bicycle there and it was propped up and he was trying to fix it. And he said, "Do you mind if you help me?" And I said, "I'm only 5. I don't know how to fix a bike. I don't know how to ride a bike." And he goes, no, help me. And I go, okay, I'll help. So I went over to him. And he didn't do anything to me. He never touched me. But he started, he pulled out his dick and he started masturbating. He starts jacking off. And I did not know what he was doing. I couldn't figure it out. And he said, "Do you know how to make milk?" I said, "I don't know how to make milk." He said, "Well, I know how to make milk, and I'll make milk for you." I said, "But you can't." And he said, I bet you I can." And he sat down, and then he came all over the grass. We were outside. We were sitting under a tree. He said, "This is milk." And he had it in his hand, and then he licked it. He said, "It's milk." I said, "No, it's not." I said, "It's not milk." He said, "Do you want to taste it?" "No." And I got up and walked away.
We were all at my grandparents' house, and they live in a different city than all of us, and it was, a holiday or family day, who knows what was going on. But so, my brothers slept on the floors in sleeping bags, my sister and I slept on a pull-out couch that folded out into a bed. And both my uncles were there, and most of the family was up late watching TV or something like that and talking. And my uncle went over, and we'd already made up the bed that my sister and I shared. And my uncle went over and supposedly fell asleep. And so my I think my mom tried to wake him up. It was kind of like, "Phil, it's time for you to go find your bed. Christine, the kids need to go to sleep." And he just never roused. So it was like not a big deal. Like, okay, so get into bed, no big deal. And then at some point in the night, he like rolled over and did the whole supposedly putting the arm across my body, like, "Oh, I'm asleep" type of thing. So just start to touch me a bit. And of course, not having had any clue about any of this and being extraordinarily innocent, I just played asleep, did that whole thing, tried turning over and stuff like that. But because he was a priest, I was in such a Catholic family that being a priest, it was kind of like he was God.
One time when I was like 3 or 4, I guess I must have been 4 because I could talk really well. I don't know how. Maybe you can talk when you're 3. I don't know. But some guy called on the phone and nobody else was home, and I answered it, and he was like talking and like I didn't want to, like I thought it was like rude to hang up on somebody, so I didn't want to hang up on him. And he's like, "But you know how like your parents are like, if someone calls and asks you if you're home alone, like don't tell them you're home alone." And he's like, of course he starts asking that, and I'm just like, I'm like scared. I'm like, shit, am I really supposed to say no? What am I supposed to really do? And he's like, "Oh, are you there alone?" He's like, I forget what he said, but he started asking me all this stuff. Then he starts asking me stuff like, "Oh, do you ever touch yourself?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Oh, do you ever like touch yourself under your panties or whatever?" And I'm like, And I don't really remember what I was saying, but I remember at some point he started telling me, he's like, "Why don't you touch yourself and like tell me tell me what that feels like. Like, at one point, he was, like, telling me, he's like, do you have anything, do you guys have, like, a carrot or a cucumber or something in your house, or, like, something that's shaped sort of like that? And I'm like, I don't know, you know, and he's like, why don't you go in the kitchen and look, you know? He's like, look and see if you have, like, a carrot or, like, a bottle or something like that. And so I, like, told him, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I have a carrot, but I didn't really go in there. And he's like, why don't you put that inside? Basically telling me to fuck myself with, like, a cucumber. Like, a 4-year-old kid's gonna fuck himself with a cucumber. But, so I was just telling him that I was, and then, remember all of a sudden he's like, you're not really doing it, are you? And I was like, oh, no. I was like, oh, and he's like, you're not really doing it, are you? And I'm like, no. And he's like, well, why don't you go do it, you know? And I forget what I think I tried to get, I got a carrot or something, and I, like, tried to do something with it, but I didn't understand. I was just like, well, it's not going in. It's not going anywhere, you know? And then I was like, and then he was like, well, I can come over and, like, show you how to do it. I could come over and show you, you know?
My friend that I was staying with was, like, we did coke together for a while, and then, like, she started smoking speed. So she was smoking speed all the time. And, like, I was doing coke, and, like, she kept getting speed from this guy that was, like, it was, like, this 40-year-old, like, black guy with a fake Jamaican accent. But he'd always sell stuff. He'd always give her speed. This one night, we're, like, hanging out with him. And he had coke, so he kept giving me lines of coke, and I was like, alright, cool, you know, whatever, I'm getting high. And then, like, at 5 in the morning, he's like, we took him back to his hotel room, and he's like, well, I want you guys to come up, you know, and hang out, just come chill in my hotel room, you know. And we were so fucked up, and, like, so we went up there, and, like, he gave me some lines, and, like, we're just sitting around, and then, like, he just starts jerking off. Like, he just starts jerking off. Like, he's laying on his bed, and he's just, like, going at it, you know? And we just sat there, and we didn't even do anything because we were so high.
Growing up, I had this really good friend named Jennifer, and she had a kind of interesting, different family, and always playing in their guest room. With the TV was always on, and porn was always on. It was on, and we never knew why. It was just, porn was always on. It was on. If we would be, like, having a conversation, they would be like, in the background.